Here at Death Party, we like to remind you that death is inevitable and natural. It has happened to billions, quadrillions of people before you, and it will happen to billions. Billions is a meaningless term. Scribhillions?
That's definitely less meaningless.
Of people after you die. Yes, fear of the unknown is a very innate fear, and what's more unknown than what happens after we die?
I'm afraid of the unknown and of dying. Wait, is it the same thing? I'm afraid of dying because it might be painful.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not painful, then I'm only afraid of the unknown part, I think. Ugh.
How have you made it to 20 plus episodes of this show?
I bury my emotions in snacks mostly. But everything in life terrifies me and gives me anxiety, so I'm mostly just powering through it and waiting for the episodes that involve ghosts.
So, we remind you of death's inevitability and naturalness so as to desensitize you to the whole it's going to happen thing and to make it less scary in the process.
How long is it going to take, though? It hasn't worked for me yet.
Don't listen to her, folks. It's all going according to plan. Listening to this podcast is going great for you, just like it's going great for us making it. Everything's great. Well, it's going great for me.
Must be nice.
Since we started doing this show, I have enjoyed at least a 1.5% reduction in the amount of cortisol spikes I've had whenever I think about my own eventual demise.
Wow. Numbers. Very small numbers.
That's science you can take to the bank. The river bank, where my lifeless body will wash up after my burial at sea, or burial at river. We've spent enough time choking fish on microplastics. It's only fair we give them back something in return, like our own bodies, for snacks.
Sorry, fish. I'm also full of microplastics and excess estrogen, so good luck if you eat me. You'll be crying and hormonal for weeks.
Here in the United States, we don't treat funerals as anything to look forward to.
Unless it's for that neighbor everyone hates. Then there might be a party.
Though in some cultures, depending on spiritual beliefs, the afterlife is a fantastic thing to look forward to. And why shouldn't we be happy for the deceased?
Why wasn't I born into one of those cultures? I would have so much, not as many anxieties.
The death industry here decided that we needed to medicalize death and make it all formal and somber and sad. Like, if you're not ugly crying at a closed casket, you're doing it wrong. It's like body shaming, but with grief.
Yeah.
Yeah, grief shaming.
Yeah.
Which brings up another unfortunate cultural norm we have here, and that is the right way to grieve.
Does it include wailing like a banshee and throwing myself on top of the casket in the open grave? Everyone I love has been cremated, so I'm waiting for the opportunity to fall into a grave and cause a real scene working out all my repressed grief.
I have a lot of repressed grief too. And it seems like the times when I'm most likely to feel like I have permission to express that repressed grief is when someone else starts with a real showy display.
All right.
Or maybe when I'm watching an Oscar bait-y movie, like Titanic. I have to see overwrought emotions in order to allow myself to feel them. Like, reading about the actual sinking of the Titanic is sad, but I simply do not feel like waterworks will ensue unless I see that CG ship going down in the dark of an icy night. It was so cold. And they just didn't have enough lifeboats.
It's true.
Like the hubris of a few arrogant, rich ass.
So they need to play the Titanic at the funeral.
Any funeral I go to, just have Kate Winslet in the background.
Like up there reading the Psalms or whatever, and people can hear this tiny little soundtrack of the Titanic coming from your phone in your pocket.
Wherever. Sorry, I shouldn't even joke about that song.
Don't start crying now.
No.
We gotta get through this.
Oh, Celine. Okay. Yeah, so bad news, my fellow emotionally repressed people. If you're at a funeral and you don't look like you hobbled in off the street after stepping on a beehive, people are going to wonder if you really cared about the deceased at all without the puffy red face to show for it. Especially if it's your first husband's funeral and he died tragically young under suspicious circumstances just weeks after you took out a large life insurance policy on it.
Maybe just less dancing on the funeral buffet table to Highway to Hell by AC/DC?
You better play me off with something better than AC/DC.
Better put it in your will, buddy. Right next to, I am fully aware that my wife took out a large insurance policy in the weeks preceding my death on this exact date, which was definitely natural causes. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take a firm stance that our cultural observations in the U.S. around death and dying are kind of crappy for the most part.
Very crappy.
And memorial services should be more fun.
Yeah, everything should be more fun. No exceptions accepted.
Except if you can accept it, then exceptions are accepted. If for no other reason than because if I need to ugly cry, I'd really prefer to do that when no one is looking and continue to repress how I really feel in the presence of others. Mm-hmm. It's all part of my carefully cultivated mystique and definitely has nothing to do with me being afraid to be vulnerable or anything.
Whose idea was it to get together and be a fountain of leaking snot in front of everyone you know anyway? I don't leave my house without maximum eyeliner. Crying removes maximum eyeliner. It simply doesn't work for me. I dislike the entire concept.
Yeah, that's the real conflict there. If you're like Faye and want to reduce the trail of watery eyeliner you leave in your path on your way home from another downer of an American funeral, good news. Not all of our funerals are meant to be weepy shows of deep depression that transform your makeup from night at the club to why do my friends keep asking me when the last time was that I ate or bathed? That's right. There's at least one type of American funeral that's more of a celebration of life, and it is the subject of this episode of
Death Party!
Not all American funerals are somber occasions that require you to speak in hushed tones while you stare into an open pit of freshly churned earth containing your loved one's discreetly stowed body.
Ah!
Take, for instance, New Orleans-style jazz funerals. What a send-off.
Tell me.
A traditional New Orleans jazz funeral is truly an amazing sight to behold. According to The Music of Black Americans, which is a book by Eileen Southern, New Orleans jazz funerals go back over 100 years and have their roots in brass bands and dance orchestras, which were comprised of black performers.
Ooh.
In those times, white youths were discouraged from preparing for careers as dance musicians.
What?
And that's why white people can't dance to this day.
Oh, I always wondered.
Around the turn of the 20th century, brass bands were common enough that every little American village aspired to have its own band to provide Sunday afternoon concerts in the village square and to play for parades on civic occasions and holidays.
I would love that.
Brass band repertoires included marches of all kinds, hymns, overtures, medleys of popular songs or operatic arias, and light classics. Bands were frequently called upon to play for funerals, particularly in southern cities. On the way to the cemetery, it was customary for the band to play very slowly and mournfully a dirge or a Protestant hymn such as Nearer My God to Thee.
No, too sad.
But on the way back, the band would strike up a lively spiritual such as When the Saints Go Marching In, or a ragtime song such as Didn't He Ramble, or a syncopated march.
Oh, okay. That's nice.
Jazz funerals are still popular today, and if you find yourself in the vicinity of a second-line funeral, you might be interested to know that passers-by are encouraged to join in and help celebrate.
Oh, I love that.
Providing, of course, that they can comport themselves in a respectful manner.
So is that crying or not crying? Or doing the limbo? Or no limbo?
A second line is basically a parade in two parts. The first line is made up of the Grand Marshal, or parade leader, the band, and whoever is being honored. If a wedding is being celebrated, for instance, the wedding party would be in the first line. In a jazz funeral, the deceased's family and the hearse are part of the first line. In this way, second lines are essentially organized the same way as a vehicular funeral procession, but without all the icky gas exhaust discharge and tiny flags.
I never understood what the tiny flags are about. There was one poked into my fried fish platter the other night, and I didn't understand that one either. Are those the same?
Interesting question. It's been my theory that the tiny flags are a holdover from when we used to send 13-year-olds to war, and they had to carry something proportionately sized, so they didn't look ridiculous carrying regular-sized flags when they charged the redcoats or whatever.
Whoa. 13-year-olds were really small back then.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me.
The strutting revelers who fall in behind the first line are referred to as the second line. The leaders of the parade carry decorated umbrellas, while the other participants shake and twirl handkerchiefs while they dance. Community members and onlookers don't stand woefully aside. They fall in and become part of the magic.
Oh my god, I love decorated umbrellas and handkerchiefs.
I don't want to get you too excited, but you could probably even decorate your handkerchief.
I want to decorate my handkerchief. I wish I could have a jazz funeral for myself before I'm dead so I could get to see it. Why was I born so whitish colored, damn it? Do I not qualify? I only have part of a % of South African ancestry.
Part of a percent?
Less than a %?
I mean, I'm sure you could probably make some calls and have a pre-death jazz funeral.
Yes!
Someone will do it if the price is right.
Hashtag life goals.
Hashtag bucket list. As with any other tradition African Americans started, it's not my place to make those decisions. So you're going to have to ask a New Orleansian. New Orleanite. New Orleanite? Okay, I looked it up. New Orleanian.
Can I make up the rest of the % with enthusiasm?
You can try. Stop doing jazz hands. I mean, not in general, but just right now, at least, because it's hard to concentrate with you doing that.
Okay.
So clearly way more panache is to be witnessed at a jazz funeral than the more sanitized and sad sack funerals we are used to in other parts of the U.S.
Hell yeah.
But that's New Orleans for you. They love a parade down there.
I also love parades. Ooh, I knew I should have been born in New Orleans.
Did you? Is this something you thought about before now?
I think about it a lot. Either New Orleans or France. Most of America is boring, uptight bullshit.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Quakers and Puritans.
Ugh.
You damn prudes.
Yeah.
So, we have the first line brass band at a jazz funeral playing upbeat music. Second lines are usually identified by brightly colored suits and banners.
I love all of this.
Yeah, it's pretty great. And just for some quick, less death-related context, African Americans began second lines as neighborhood celebrations. The neighborhood organizations offered social aid to freed enslaved folks, such as loans and insurance, and used the second lines as a form of advertising. What a great way to grab your target demographic's attention. Can you imagine if this caught on? If, instead of those insufferable insurance ads with their maddeningly catchy jingles that will get stuck in your head for decades.
I hate ad jingles. On my deathbed, I will still have brain cells devoted to the Meow Mix jingle, and I don't even have a cat. Or that many brain cells.
Imagine if instead of cute/creepy little CGI mascots, insurance companies hired bands to march down your street, thumping on some drums, and Rudy tootin' on some brass instruments. Tubas? Horns. Getting horny in the street. That's what they're doing. What the fuckers? Oh, trumpets, trombones, and such. Yeah, imagine that. Rudy toot and some trombones and some trumpets.
So much better.
So much better. Second lines were also used to honor members who died in their community, and these community members are the ones who came up with the idea of second lines at funerals in the first place.
Oh, I was wondering how we went from insurance to funerals. Not that they're mutually exclusive concepts.
Second lines in the first place. Great writing.
What?
Nothing. Now, if you want even more historical context, the concept of funerals as celebrations here can be traced back to what else? Slavery. The reason? America. Enslaved Africans whose lives were upended when they were brought to America sought to honor the religious and cultural beliefs and traditions of their ancestors once here, and this included cultural practices involving death. The religious meaning of death as a time of rebirth and not the end of life is an African cultural pattern still present in the example of jazz funerals. The idea of returning to Africa after one dies is based on a firm religious belief in reincarnation. We touched a little on this concept before.
Which time was this?
In our Book of the Dead episode.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one. There was so much crazy information in there that I was honestly like, what? For our listeners that haven't listened to that one yet, could you just briefly walk us through, like, the entire thing, beginning to end, but give them the short version, you know? Maybe you could summarize the whole episode in one sentence, but, like, make it as long as the episode.
When you say there's so much crazy information, like, what do you think was the craziest thing that you learned from that episode? Just as an example.
Well, I don't want to give it away for our listeners, but I did have one idea of what the Book of the Dead was, and then when we researched it, it was totally not that.
Yeah.
So, no spoilers. Go listen, you guys.
No spoilers.
Jeez. And if you don't remember it as much as I don't remember it, go listen again anyways. And give it a 5-star review while you're there.
Yes. Give them all 5 stars.
Yeah, we put a lot of work into them. Jeez.
And it's hot and we're sweating. Our sweat and our tears
really
are
hot in here.
all over this episode.
My eyeliner.
She's a mess, guys. You don't want to see it. If you don't give us reviews, we'll post the pictures everywhere.
Ooh.
For anyone that needs a refresher, you can go listen to episode 9, titled What's Black and White and Dead All Over. Yeah. Related to death and rebirth is the belief that ancestors are the link between the creator and mankind, equal to and in addition to other gods. This can be tied into the practice of voodoo, which is a religious form of ancestor worship that can be traced to West Africa, the West Indies, and then to New Orleans. If you want to learn more about voodoo, keep listening, and I will describe where you can go to find out more, because that is too big of a topic to do much more than touch on it in this episode. VoodooSpiritualTemple.org is the website for New Orleans' only formally established voodoo temple, which was started by a priest and a priestess. And hey, if you're in the area, it's open to people of all races whose spiritual needs can be ministered there.
Yay, I qualify. I am a people of all races.
You sure are. Lucky you. Brag. The practice of voodoo rituals on present-day Louisiana's soil goes back to the 18th century. And just a quick note, when I say present-day Louisiana, I am referring to land that had already been in the care of indigenous American tribes like the Chitimacha, Choctaw, and Homa for ages. Other links to West Indian religious funeral rituals can be seen to this day in the dance moves of second liners, notably in the banda style of dance, which is recognizable for having, shall we say, moves inspired by the kinds of movements that two people in love make. The reason this dance is so distinctly graphic is that it symbolizes the act of rebirth. And just a lot of solid, blatant The banda is also danced in Trinidad and Tobago in honor of the deceased, although there they call it the bongo. From the beginnings of the transatlantic slave trade through the period prior to the Civil War, also known as the antebellum period, death was often imagined as the ultimate freedom from a life of oppression.
And it's starting to look that way again with all the ways that things are going. I will say, with all the broken promises and stripping people of our rights from the toddler in charge, the one thing this presidency is actually fixing is my death anxiety, since I'll finally be done hearing about that stupid motherfucker when I'm dead.
That's insulting to toddlers. You take that back.
That's true. Toddlers aren't that bad.
Unless you reincarnate back here.
No, I'm done.
You brought this on yourself. Africans who were shipped here to live a life of enslavement believed death was a way for their spirits to return home to Africa. Throughout African American history, death and funerals have been inextricably intertwined with life and freedom. In this sense, a homegoing was a spiritual journey they looked forward to, one that would transcend the suffering and injustices of the mortal world. If that doesn't sound like enough reason to feel something other than complete and utter devastation at the loss of life of someone you love dearly, consider this. In some African cosmologies about death, the dead and the living are never separated from one another, but are always intimately connected. African religious beliefs imagine deceased ancestors as dynamic spiritual forces that guide life for their living descendants.
I wish I'd been raised with a belief system like that. I've always felt lucky that my parents didn't raise me telling me I'd burn in hell, but I've always also thought of death as a boundary between me and my past loved ones, or if I'm the one who's dead, then between me and all of this. So, that only contributes a tiny bit to my constant state of anxiety.
Yeah, a tiny bit. That's good.
Yeah.
Just keep it just a little nugget of anxiety.
It's manageable. Just constant.
150 milligrams or so. It's fine. Yeah. It is no wonder then that African funerary rituals are more of a cause for celebration than the funerals we're used to. If you're ever lucky enough to witness or even partake in a New Orleans second line, now you'll know that this is a sacred way to honor the deceased that ultimately goes much further back than even the hundreds of years it has been observed here in the States. By some historians' estimates, New Orleans' second lines started in the early 1800s, but, according to the director of research at the Whitney Plantation in Louisiana, Ibrahima Seck, the origins of the New Orleans second line go back to the transatlantic trade of enslaved Africans. Seck maintains that it's hard to find evidence of second lines before emancipation, what with that whole law against those who were enslaved being able to, read or write. However, the dirge, the dancing, and the overall showiness and splendor of funeral processions by Black New Orleanians can be traced back to the funerary practices of West African countries like Senegal and Gambia.
Hell yeah! That's where my part of a percent is from. That must be the DNA that's responsible for my love of parasols.
Yes, I could tell you're very proud of your heritage based on the amount of parasols.
My part of a percent. Traditional American funerals are so solemn and depressing. They treat grief like homework you have to do in an uncomfortable black suit. Sit in pews, shuffle to the burial site, maybe mumble some old hymn, or try not to make sniffly snot sounds in a big echoey quiet room while some old dude is mumbling a hymn. Maybe it's mourning the loss of a loved one, but it certainly doesn't feel like celebrating the life that they shared with us to me.
Now, compare that to a New Orleans jazz funeral where death gets a brass band. The air vibrates with life, and even pain and grief learn to twerk. A jazz funeral doesn't just bury a body, it throws it a homecoming party.
That's it. I'm moving to New Orleans so I can have a jazz funeral. Will they let me have one if I die on arrival? I'm pretty sure the humidity there will kill me instantly, so the whole thing kind of hinges on that.
So yeah, should you find yourself able to participate in a jazz funeral, hopefully we've given you at least enough background into the cultural beliefs behind these sacred events so that you can participate in a respectful manner and not in the way that many visitors to New Orleans participate in any festivities there, which is by getting blackout drunk and finding glitter and Mardi Gras beads in just the darndest places the next day without being sure of how it all wound up there.
Yikes, maybe I'm not cut out for life in New Orleans after all.
You do like glitter.
I like glitter, but not in the darndest of places.
Yeah, it's definitely a lifestyle change. So as we wrap up today's death party episode, ask yourself, which funeral would you rather be invited to?
A room full of wet Kleenex, stiff collars, and condolences whispered over assorted potluck casseroles?
Or a street full of color, dance moves obviously inspired by Rumpy Pumpy, and music loud enough to wake the dead? I know which one I would choose.
I'd rather go out with raised spirits. If you like us, if we haven't traumatized you yet, if you want more of our bizarre dad joke brand of whatever this is, then help us help you get more of what you want by giving us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. And tell your friends. If they're as weird as you are, they might like us too. If you wanted to find other weirdos like you, or follow our Facebook page or Instagram, we're on all of those at Death Party Podcast. If you want to email us your amazing idea for an episode, love letters, hate mail, fan art, or your soul, you're not really using it anyway, you can send those to us at deathpartypodcast@gmail.com. Bye!
Bye.
Ooh!
You're sleeping in that
That
6
wasn't
foot
a-
hole I dug in the courtyard last
Right
night.
after making jokes about an early death and an insurance policy.
Hello, MetLife? Yes. I'd like to double that amount, please. No reason. Just, the state of things and all.